Part 87. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 861. Xiaopinggan is not a soft-hearted bad guy. As soon as he saw the killer's soul wailing in the flames and the hateful faces that appeared in the flames, he knew that this guy was definitely not a good bird. At this moment, the situation is entirely self-inflicted. For some people, the real judgment of life comes after death. Besides, Xiaopinggan didn't know how to stop the flames burning this killer's soul. It was the first time to be called a god, and it felt a bit fresh. After arriving in this mysterious prison, Xiaopinggan found a circle of golden light on his body, which looked holy and majestic. "What's your name?" Xiaopinggan just asked, and the voice echoed in the cell, like the low roar of thunder in the clouds. My name is Xuanhuan," the killer replied while screaming. Strangely enough, when the killer answered Xiaopinggan's question, the flames that were burning his body suddenly stopped, causing the killer's tortured soul to stop suffering. The injury was recovering quickly, and he looked at Xiaopinggan with gratitude and awe. "Who sent you to assassinate me on the train?" Xiaopinggan continued to ask. "Yes, Dickens from the Dark Moon Club found me. I am just a killer who received a mission. The reward for this mission is 360 thalers. "What organization is the Dark Moon Club?" Xiaopinggan asked. "The Dark Moon Club is a secret club in the Brandy province. Those who join this club are all powerful and wealthy people in the Brandy province. The address of the Dark Moon Club is at the Duke's Castle on Rose Street in Courland. Dickens, you are one of the butlers of the Dark Moon Club." "He did not tell me about the client. He just paid half of the fee first and told me your itinerary. I have also accepted Dickens's commission before. I have killed people for him." This killer was very clever and said a lot of things in one breath. "Oh." Xiaopinggan's brows moved. The Dark Moon Club had nothing to do with his life as a little security guard. As for Dickens, it had no connection with him at all and he had never heard of it. In these short few days, first the gangsters came to him, and now the killers came. Xiaopinggan thought about it. The only person he had offended more severely during this period was the last time he tried to drag Angela away in the hotel. The man who entered the room and molested her. That guy lived in the most expensive luxury suite in the hotel. When he came to the hotel, there was a coachman and a luxury carriage. He was very stylish. At that time, Angela shouted for help. Xiaopinggan, who was patrolling the floor, heard the sound and rushed over. When he saw the guy smelled of alcohol and was dragging Angela into his room. Xiaopinggan rushed up and pushed the guy away. The guy still wanted to force himself, so Xiaopinggan knocked him to the ground and hit the guy's belly. After a few hard kicks, the guy's face was covered in blood and he threatened Xiaopinggan to make Xiaopinggan look good. But then the incident became louder and alarmed the entire floor. The hotel manager came. Between calling the police and settling the matter, the guy chose the latter and compensated Angela a sum of money. That night the guy was dejected. Left the hotel. Xiaopinggan still remembers the name Franco Petrarch that the guy registered with his ID card when he checked into the hotel. "Do you know Franco Petrarch?" Xiaopinggan asked. "Don't know," the killer shook his head. "Isn't there this person in the Dark Moon Club?" "As far as I know, no." Xiaopinggan was too lazy to say anything more, turned around and left. As soon as Xiaopinggan left, the flames in the cell suddenly became fierce again, and the killer screamed again. "The gods are above. I want to contribute everything I have to the gods. I still have something in Kalanda, the boundary bead." "Boundary beads? This guy hasn't drained his juice yet." Xiaopinggan suddenly stopped and turned around. "You said you still have the boundary pearl in Kalanda." As soon as Xiaopinggan opened his mouth, the flames in the room suddenly stopped again. "Yes, I still have 2 world beads." "Where did it come from?" "I found it from the people who were killed when I was on a mission. Because it was difficult to get rid of it, I kept it." I hid the 2 boundary beads and some other things on the left side of the statue in the Saints Square east of Courland. The 3 street lamps point under the floor tiles of the square clock. As long as you remove the floor tile and peel off the layer of soil under the floor tiles, you will see an iron box wrapped in oilcloth. The boundary beads are in the iron box. The iron box, in addition to the world beads, there is also some money. Xiaopingan touched his face. Is there anything else you want to say? I am willing to dedicate everything I have to the gods. The killer shouted. What you can offer cannot completely atone for your crimes. Please repent here. Xiaopingan nodded, turned around and left without saying anything else. And as Xiaopingan left, the flames in the room appeared again, and the killer's soul was burned again and began to wail and scream, but this time the flames seemed not as fierce as before. In the compartment of the train, Xiaopingan opened his eyes again. Less than 10 minutes had just passed, and the train was still running on the tracks. Dark Moon Club, is it interesting? He muttered to himself, and as soon as the hand holding the revolver moved, the revolver disappeared from his hand. Just now, Xiaopingan had used up some of his divine power to open up a small storage space in his spatial warehouse. After putting the gun, bullets, medicine, and some banknotes in, Xiaopingan had nothing glaring on his body anymore, just like when he got in the car. It was almost evening, and the train, which had been on the road for most of the day, finally stopped at Courland railway station. People come and go at Courland railway station. The yellow railway station hall is very impressive. There are 8 platforms in the entire railway station. Several huge steel bridges span the platforms, and rows of trains are parked there. On the railway track next to the platform, it was much busier than Slevin. Xiaopingan followed the bustling crowd and bowed out of the station. Outside the station, he called a taxi waiting outside and asked the driver to go to Andesburg. When the sun set, Andesburg finally appeared in front of Xiaopingan. It was a fortress built of grey granite, full of traces of time. It looked like it had been there for some time. The entire castle had an area of several square kilometers. The forest pasture and manor are located at the foot of a majestic mountain range. This is the most important base of the investigation bureau in Brandy province. It is also the training place for new recruits who have just joined the investigation bureau in Brandy province. The fastest website to update the mobile version. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 862. A river more than 10 meters wide separates the main entrance of Andesburg from the road outside. A suspension bridge tied by an iron chain spans the river. On the other side of the suspension bridge is a huge dark brown gate. On the gate is hung here a red thorn coat of arms representing the Bureau of Investigation, and a brass-colored metal plate hung on the other side of the gate at the Red Rhone Republic National Security Investigation Bureau's Brandy Province Special Service Base. 2 armed sentries in dark red uniforms were on duty under the fortress at the main entrance, watching vigilantly as Xiaopingan walked across the suspension bridge with a salute. After Xiaopingan revealed his identity, a sentry took Xiaopingan to a waiting room next to the sentry and asked Xiaopingan to wait here. Sitting in the waiting room, Xiaopingan could faintly hear sporadic noises coming from the direction of the Andesburg manor. Gunshots. About 20 minutes later, footsteps sounded outside the waiting room. A Chinese man with black hair, dark eyes, a beard, a square face, short hair, and looked to be in his 30s walked into the waiting room. The man was wearing a black lapel uniform with a belt around his waist and black leather boots. He looked like an officer from the Bureau of Investigation. Chinese. When he saw Xiaopingan, the man was slightly startled, and then a friendly smile appeared on his face. I just heard that there is a newly awakened God's favorite in Slavin coming to report. I didn't expect it to be you. It's been a long time since a Chinese divine favored person came to Andesburg. In the past 3 months, you are the first one. My name is Fang Ping, Andesburg's instructor. What's your name? My name is Xiaopingan. You follow me, I will take you to go through the reporting procedures. Thank you, instructor. Seeing that Fang Ping had turned around and walked out, Xiaopinggan followed Fang Ping in with his suitcase. After entering the gate, Fang Ping pointed to the building behind a camphor forest in the distance directly in front of the gate and introduced it to Xiaopinggan. That is the main fort of Andesburg. During the training period, the students will eat and live in the main fort. To the east of the main fort, the deputy fort is the General Affairs building of the Investigation Bureau in Andesburg. It is a restricted area. Students training here are not allowed to enter without permission. If you enter without permission, you may be killed by the secret guards guarding the General Affairs building. This has happened more than once before. In this place, the curiosity of the newly awakened gods and the arrogance brought about by the new mastery of magic will kill themselves, Fang Ping said, turning his head to look at Xiaopinggan. For the sake of our fellow, for the sake of the Chinese people, I hope that such a tragedy will not happen to you. The Bureau of Investigation is exposed to the most dangerous and darkest things, and they often dance on the blade with death. Everyone's nerves are very tense, so, don't make jokes and challenge any rules here easily in the Investigation Bureau. Okay, I remember. The second forbidden area in Andesburg is that after the lights are turned off at night, don't try to swim out of the river outside the door without permission. People who go into the river at night will usually become corpses floating on the water the next day. The first thing here is the three forbidden areas are the dungeons of the main castle. If you hear any strange noises coming from the underground at night, just pretend you didn't hear it. Xiaopinggan's heart moved. You mean, Andesburg is not as safe as we thought? Fang Ping's face suddenly became serious. For those blessed by God, no place in this world is absolutely safe. As long as there are people, danger is everywhere. Remember, even in Andesburg, everyone is friendly to you. Understood, Xiaopinggan nodded. What will the new god's favorite learn here? Naturally, we need to learn how to transform from a newly awakened god's favorite to a qualified state secret police so that we can better serve the Bureau of Investigation. Most of the newly awakened god's favorite will not use what they have. Special abilities, their physical fitness and potential have not been fully tapped. They are still unfamiliar with shooting, fighting, swordsmanship, riding, tracking, anti-tracking, and investigation skills. They are also not very clear about the various rules of the Investigation Bureau and cannot adapt to complex and dangerous tasks, so you need to train here. Most of these courses are completely unnecessary for Xiaopinggan, because he still retains all his abilities and skills, except for his less magical power. Those courses such as shooting, fighting and riding are not suitable for him. For me, all it takes is memories and familiarity. How long will the training take? Everyone's situation is different, and the training time is also different. It can be as short as half a month, and as long as 3 months. During the training in Andesburg, you are a trainee police officer of the Investigation Bureau, and you have 3 thalers and 10 dings per week. After completing the training, you will be officially transferred to the second-level police officer of the Investigation Bureau. The specific salary and benefits are determined by your comprehensive performance during the training period. The so-called comprehensive performance means that you may become a trainee police officer of the Investigation Bureau during the period. You have to participate in some Bureau of Investigation tasks. After the training is completed, you will be assigned to specific jobs. Are the specific jobs located in Brandywine province? Yes, except for a few rare cases, the posts of God's favored persons who were trained in Andesburg are generally in Brandy province. As the two of them talked, Fang Ping took Xiaopinggan to a house with a red roof in the manor. You will be inspected here for new students. I will wait for you at the door. You take your just bow and go in, do as the people inside ask you to do, and take out your test results when you come out. Xiaopinggan nodded and entered the house with the red roof while holding his own salute. This house was like a hospital. The decoration inside was plain white and smelled of disinfectant. Entering inside, Xiaopinggan saw an iron table and an old man with a prim look and glasses wearing a white coat. Behind the table, the old man started to put on his gloves when he saw Xiaopinggan coming in. He pointed at the table, "Put the gift here, open your gift box, take off all your clothes, and put everything on the table, remember, is all." Xiaopinggan put his leather suitcase on the table, opened the suitcase, and then stripped himself naked in front of the old man. They were all men anyway, and it was an inspection, so Xiaopinggan would not feel any embarrassment. Yes, just take a bath in the bathhouse. Seeing Xiaopinggan strip off and put everything on the table, the old man nodded and pointed to a room in the corridor. "Okay, you can report to that room now." Xiaopinggan came to the room naked, opened the door, and felt that the room was like a morgue. The temperature of the entire room suddenly dropped by more than 10 degrees. The room was surrounded by metal walls, and the ground in the middle of the room was on top. There is a crystal coffin that is almost 3 meters long. The outside of the crystal is covered with strange runes and there is a trace of divine power. "Lie in." The old man in the room also said to Xiaopinggan with a stiff look. Xiaopinggan did as he was told. He lay down in the huge crystal coffin. He lay flat inside. The old man closed the lid of the crystal coffin. Xiaopinggan felt his secret mandala vibrating with a dense energy. "Wrap your whole body like mist, like doing a full body scan." After almost 5 minutes of this, the old man in the room opened the lid of the crystal coffin, let Xiaopinggan come out of the crystal coffin, handed him a piece of paper, pricked his right thumb with a silver needle, and asked him to. A bloody handprint was pressed on the piece of paper. Xiaopinggan glanced at the piece of paper and saw that there were only 3 lines of words on the piece of paper. The first line of personal cleaning and safety. The second line has 0 divine power. Third row secret mandala is not activated. Behind each of these 3 lines, a circle is drawn. Xiaopinggan was slightly shocked. There were actually 2 points of divine power in his secret mandala, just above the giant tower. It seemed that the inspection just now did not detect it. After walking out of the room and going outside, Xiaopinggan's old cowhide suitcase and the clothes he wore before were all gone. A new cowhide suitcase was placed on the table. The other clothes, watches, and banknotes were all still there. "Exist. Where did you get that suitcase from before?" the old man asked. "My adoptive father left it to me." "What does your adoptive father do?" "He is a low-level priest in the temple." The old man nodded. "That suitcase has been in the temple for a long time. It has been infected by the temple's atmosphere and cannot enter the castle. The suitcase has been disposed of." "This is your new suitcase?" Xiaopinggan was stunned for a moment. The old suitcase was also something left by his adoptive father, who was a magician. He didn't expect that he could actually check it out. Xiaopinggan put on his clothes again, packed his suitcase and went out. Fang Ping was still waiting outside the room. Xiaopinggan handed over the piece of paper, and Fang Ping took it and looked at it. He put away the inspection card and nodded. "Okay, there is no problem on your side. It is officially reported. I will take you there at your residence, collect your basic supplies and Bureau of Investigation student manual in Andesburg. It's past dinner time tonight, so you can't eat anymore. There won't be breakfast until tomorrow morning. How are the training courses arranged here? I am responsible for all your training courses. You have a good rest today. I will give you a comprehensive test tomorrow and then decide what to teach you next." More than 10 minutes later, after Xiaopinggan received some things, he was taken to a single dormitory on the first floor of the castle by Fang Ping. After asking Xiaopinggan to wait for him at the training ground at 5:30 tomorrow morning, Fang Ping left. There are also dormitories next to Xiaopinggan's dormitory. In those dormitories, there are newly awakened God's favored ones from other places in Brandy province who have come to Andesburg for training. Because the God's favorites who come here are arriving one after another, Andesberg adopts a single-person responsibility system for the training of these new God's favorites. One instructor may lead one or two, or at most 2 or 3 students. The conditions of the students are also different, there are men and women, and the dormitory for female students is just above Xiaoping'an and the others. That night, Xiaoping'an slept until midnight when he was awakened by strange noises coming from underground. Underground in Andesberg, there was a faint singing voice of a woman. As soon as he closed his eyes, the singing voice would appear in the ear. The singing appeared for a while and then disappeared. Seeing that there was no other movement in the fort and nothing unusual in the other dormitories, Xiaoping'an was calm. The next day, before dawn, Xiaoping'an got up. After washing up, he put on his new training clothes and arrived at the training ground before 5:30 in the morning. At 5:30, Fang Ping showed up on time. He pointed to the track at the training ground and said to Xiaoping'an, "The track at this training ground is 500 meters in a circle. Let me see your physical fitness first." In Andesberg, the passing mark is to run 20 laps here in 30 minutes. The fastest website to update the mobile version. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 863. Life in Andesberg gave Xiaoping'an the feeling of being a new person and returning to the Order Committee. Yes, the Investigation Bureau and the Order Committee have many similarities in terms of their powers. The only difference is that in this world, in the Investigation Bureau the power of the secret police is much greater than that of the Order Committee. The only one that can compare with the Investigation Bureau is probably the Jinyi Town Demon Guard, the predecessor of the Investigation Bureau. Firearms shooting, fighting, swordsmanship, riding, tracking, reconnaissance, there are many courses for newcomers to the Investigation Bureau in Andesberg. Fang Ping just gave some instructions, and Xiaoping'an was able to understand and master them very quickly. Xiaoping'an's potential made Fang Ping very satisfied. In Fang Ping's words, he had rarely seen first-level 1-star gods with such strong physical strength and learning ability. In addition to these courses, Fang Ping also taught Xiaoping'an how to understand and explore his secret mandala and how to use divine power to perform spells. Although these courses were a bit funny to Xiaoping'an, in order to pretend to be like, Xiaoping'an is still studying very seriously. Many of the summoning spells in this world are restricted by the laws of this world, and they have become the same as before. For example, in the sky, in the past, summoners had the ability to fly after fusing the Lazy World Pearl. But in this world, in Fang Ping's words, the sky and the earth are awe-inspiring realms that belong to the gods and are closest to the gods. Those powerful ones, so only summoners of level 11 or above have the ability to travel between the sky and the earth. The ability that was originally fused with the Lazy World Pearl has become some kind of auxiliary running and jumping technique in this world. It can make people run as fast as the wind on the ground, and the body is as agile as a cheetah, but it is not the ability to fly. And the amount of divine power consumed to cast this kind of auxiliary spell is very large, so much that it makes people feel distressed and dare not use it at will. Another example is Earth Escape. Fang Ping also specifically warned Xiaoping'an that Earth Escape is one of the most dangerous spells mastered by summoners, because once this spell is cast, not to mention the amount of divine power it consumes is staggering. The effect of this spell may be equivalent to suicide, because the physical strength of the vast majority of God's blessed ones cannot withstand the powerful backlash of being squeezed by the earth brought by the Earth Escape technique. If they escape into the ground at will, they will die. Thousands of tons of force are squeezing on the body of the God's beloved. This pressure can consume all the God's beloved's divine power in an instant, and then crush the bones, muscles and internal organs of the God's beloved until they are bloody, killing them instantly. As for the secret method of combining domain power with magic and martial arts, Xiaopinggan felt that he could no longer use it at all, because the entire divine domain gave him the feeling that he was in a more powerful and unimaginable domain. Higher order laws govern everything in this world. In this kind of study, Xiaopingyan quickly spent a month in Andesburg, and then he finally felt that his secret mandala had increased by 10 points of divine power after a month. For those who have experienced that the secret mandala can restore 7 to 8,000 points of divine power in a month, the 10 points of divine power restored by the secret mandala every month is simply a joke. But this is the fact, and one has to accept it. There were about 50 newcomers to the Bureau of Investigation who were studying and training in Andesburg during the same period. Among these newcomers, except Xiaopingyan, who was Chinese, there were 4 other Chinese newcomers, one named Zhou Ding'an and the other Huang Dejao. One is named Lin Luyu, and the other is named Yan Qianqian. The other 4 Chinese ethnic groups, 2 men and 2 women, inevitably bumped into each other every day when eating and staying in Andesburg. They were of the same race. Gradually, after just a month, Xiaopingyan also became friends with those few. The 2 Chinese newcomers got to know each other and became friends. Xiaopingyan also basically knows the other newcomers who are training together here. On this day, Xiaopingyan stayed in the library of Andesburg all morning. At noon, he went to the cafeteria of the restaurant. He had just picked up lunch and fruit and found a seat to sit down. Then he saw Zhou Ding'an and Lin Luyu walking together. After entering the restaurant, the 4 of them took their lunch and sat down together, just at the same table as Xiaopingyan. "Ping'an, didn't you participate in training this morning? Why didn't I see you at the training ground?" Huang Dejao sat down, stuffed a large piece of sausage into his mouth, and started chatting with Xiaopingyan. Huang Dejao is a fat man who is 1.85 meters tall. He is just 20 years old this year. Before coming to Andesburg, he followed his father to kill pigs at home. He was a butcher. The process of his awakening to become a favored one is a bit funny. In other words, he was killing a pig for the first time that day, and when he stabbed it with a knife, he felt like a door opened in his head, and he woke up all of a sudden. He was also baffled. Instructor Fang has allowed me to arrange my training time freely. If you don't understand anything, ask him again. Xiaopingyan smiled. I felt that I had read too few books before, so I went to the library to read and browse some information today. I think it's quite useful. I feel so stupid. The instructor said that I won't be able to graduate in 3 months. From now on, I can only go to the investigation bureau to inspect the warehouse. Huang Dejao scratched his head and smiled sheepishly, and said with a simple face, "Actually, I think there is nothing wrong with looking at the warehouse, at least it is better than being a butcher, and I can recover 120 points of divine power a year from now on. I can summon a few farmers to rent them out, and I can make a lot of money a year and live a good life. Got it? Dejao, you are a favored person of the gods. You have some ambition, okay. Why are you satisfied with just being a warehouse manager?" Zhou Ding'an looked at Huang Dejao with a look of disgust on his face, and directly educated Huang Dejao, "Others can master it. Skills, as long as we work hard, we can master them. We are favored by the gods, that is, the only talents favored by the gods. We will do great things in the future and shoulder the important task of protecting mankind. I must let Rui everyone in the Drawn Republic knows my name." Zhou Ding'an is 21 years old. He is a standard handsome guy with sword-like eyebrows and raised eyes. Among the 5, he is always the one with the most high morale. "Well, I haven't thought about it that much. It doesn't matter whether I do big things or not. I think it's enough to do simple things well. If everyone does big things, then someone has to do simple things too, such as talk about looking at the warehouse," Huang Dejao said with a smile. Zhou Ding'an wanted to educate him a few more words, but was interrupted by the person next to him. "Zhou Ding'an, if you want everyone in Red Roan to know your name, It's actually very simple. You put an advertisement in all newspapers and have someone slap you for your big mouth. Who can make you happy? Just give your horse and carriage shop to someone, and I guarantee that you will let everyone in Red Roan know your name in the shortest possible time. Lin Luyu, who was holding a spoon next to him, said coldly, directly Zhou Ding'an choked. Lin Luyu is a 19-year-old short-haired Chinese beauty with fair skin, red eyes, cold temperament, and slender figure. She often pours cold water on hot-headed people when she opens her mouth, like the reincarnation of a gangster. Lin Luyu's awakening process was simpler. She painted alone at home, and then she woke up. I heard from instructor Opala today that we will be arranged to perform a task together tomorrow. We are going to be executioners to execute a group of death row inmates in the Brandy Provincial Serious Prison. This is a test that all newcomers to the Investigation Bureau must go through. Just to help everyone overcome the fear of killing, I am a little scared. What should I do? If I had known that I was going to kill someone, I would rather not wake up. A timid voice came, and the speaker was Yan Qian. When speaking, he also said face distressed. Yan Qian has long hair and a hot figure, but her temper is opposite to her figure. She is the timidest among the five, the most shy and prone to blushing, and she speaks softly. Her parents are from Brandy Province. A professor at the university, her awakening process was when she accidentally drowned while swimming, and then she awakened. Qian, if you want to become a qualified secret police, you will inevitably see blood. Besides, those people are evil people, so don't be merciful. Zhou Ding'an said generously. You sound like you've killed someone before, aren't you a rookie too? Lin Luyu said again from the side. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 864. Xiaoping'an ate quietly. Lin Luyu and others were discussing their mission as executioners, and more people came to eat in the restaurant. Suddenly, there was a wow sound in the restaurant. This sound was loud and echoed in the restaurant. This sound is familiar to everyone, because it is the sound of food passing from the stomach through the esophagus and ejected from the mouth. It is usually the sound of vomiting. Xiaoping'an turned around and saw a student who had just been sitting at a table not far away. He looked at the things on his plate and suddenly ran out of the restaurant with his mouth covered. Just after the student ran out of the restaurant, another person at the same table turned pale, and a fountain spurted out from his mouth, and then he turned around and left the restaurant quickly. Trash, you can't stand such a little stimulation. Isn't it just stewed pig brains with tomatoes, plus a little bit of Jorum's special delicacy fancy sausage? I asked the restaurant to make this specially for you. You can't even eat such a little thing. A tall instructor roared loudly at the table, and then stared at another guy who was still sitting at the table and looked at the plate with a pale face. Bretta, you are the only one left now. No need to change places, just eat your lunch here. In the next 2 weeks, all they will have for breakfast, lunch, and dinner is stewed pig brains with tomatoes and fancy sausages. The student named Bretta just gritted his teeth and struggled to eat the lunch on his plate amidst a pile of vomit, but he couldn't last more than 2 bites and vomited again. The smell of vomiting was floating in the restaurant. Oh! There was a lot of complaints in the restaurant. This was really unappetizing. The people over there seemed to be the students who participated in the executioner mission yesterday. Huang Dejao swallowed his saliva and said nervously. That devil Joe is so cruel. He actually made his students eat fancy sausages after killing people. Zhou Ding'an shook his head. He looked at what was left on his plate and lost his appetite. The so-called fancy sausage is a special delicacy of Qoram province. The cooked intestines are marinated in strawberry jam, and then the intestines are stuffed with various chopped edible things and stuffing. Entering the pig blood soup, the flavor of the fancy meat sausage, let alone whether it is delicious or not, just the way it looks, it is like eating something just taken out of a human body, with a bloody intestine in it on the plate. With a cut of the knife, all kinds of pulpy juices and pig blood soup stuffed in the intestines burst out, which is a perfect visual effect. As for the pig brain stewed with tomatoes, a few pale pig brains were scooped into the tomato soup, which also looked disgusting. No wonder those students couldn't help but vomit. There are many instructors in Andesburg, but not all instructors are like Fang Ping. For example, the instructor named Devil Joe by the students is one of them. Andesburg is famous for his harsh treatment of students. Xiaoping'an had finished eating, and Lin Luyu and others had lost their appetites. Only Huang Dejao seemed to be still eating the things on his plate without any mental obstacles. At this moment, a budgerigar flew in from outside the restaurant. After circling the restaurant, it landed directly on the table in front of Xiaoping'an. The parrot took a few steps on the table and looked at it. Looking at Xiaoping'an, he opened his mouth and spoke in a weird accent, "Come to the office after dinner, come to the office after dinner, come to the office after dinner." After repeating the sentence 3 times, the budgerigar flapped its wings and flew away again. Everyone in the restaurant was surprised by this budgerigar. "Wow, this budgerigar is so cute. I wonder how much power it takes to summon it." Yan Qian looked at the parrot flying away with a look of envy. "You women are really..." Zhou Ding'an was halfway through his words when he saw Lin Luyu's eyes glaring over and quickly swallowed the rest of his words. "That budgerigar is Fang Ping's summoned object. It can fly around to deliver messages to Fang Ping, and can also be Fang Ping's eyes. For example, it can monitor Xiaoping'an's running exercises and complete Fang Ping's training tasks. This thing doesn't look like it? It's unattractive, but it's so easy to use and has so many uses that even Xiaoping'an is a little envious." Feeling that the atmosphere in the restaurant was already unpleasant, Xiaoping'an stood up immediately and was about to leave. "Instructor, if you have something to ask me, I'll go there." 10 minutes later, Xiaoping'an knocked on Fang Ping's office door. "Come in." Fang Ping's voice came from inside. Xiaoping'an opened the door and walked in, and saw Fang Ping at the window, feeding his budgerigar to drink water. The summoned creatures in this world come in 1 year, and within this year, these summoned creatures under normal circumstances, only a little water can maintain their existence. These summoned creatures seem to get some kind of power from the water. Of course, these summoned creatures, like real creatures, need to rest regularly to stay active. For example, this bird, if you let it fly for 2 consecutive days without rest, it will definitely be exhausted and then dissipate. "Instructor Fang, look for me." Fang Ping put down the small water glass in his hand and turned around. "Yes, there is a task for you. This is also your first official task after entering Andesburg. At 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, you and the other people participating in the task students will gather at the fountain of the main castle. Someone will take you to the execution ground. You will be the executioners at the execution ground tomorrow and execute a group of death row prisoners for heinous crimes. Is there any problem?" "No problem," Xiaoping'an said calmly. "If you can successfully complete this task and pass the test, I will allow you to graduate from Andesburg. You have learned almost everything you should learn here, and the rest is just training. If you can calmly kill those damned people decisively, then you can already participate in some first-level simple tasks of the Bureau of Investigation." "I know, thank you, instructor." Xiaoping'an was slightly excited. He didn't expect this day to come so soon. What if someone can't complete tomorrow's task? Well, this investigation bureau has considered that killing is not an easy task for some people. Generally speaking, if you want to graduate from Andesburg, you must successfully complete at least 3 executioner tasks. If you really cannot complete the executioner task, unable to overcome the psychological barrier of killing people, it means that they will not be reused in the Bureau of Investigation in the future. The final result will be to spend their whole lives in the logistics support offices everywhere, and all the resources and honors will not be with them, because there is no any a secret policeman would want to go on a mission with a comrade who is afraid to execute criminals, and such a person might end up killing many of his comrades during the mission because of his kindness and hesitation. I understand, Xiaopinggan nodded. You seem to spend more time in the library than on the training ground these days, Fang Ping said suddenly. I feel that my knowledge is very lacking, so I want to take the opportunity to learn more, because I have heard a saying before, that knowledge is power, Xiaopinggan replied calmly. Yes, you are right, Fang Ping nodded and smiled slightly. Just remember, this is Andesburg. How much knowledge you have in your head cannot be seen by others, but your performance on the training ground and the strength can be seen by many people. The Bureau of Investigation has many branches and agencies in Brandy Province. The whereabouts of trainee police officers who also studied and trained here after graduation also determine their future. The investigation There is an old saying in the Bureau, the world pearls will always be concentrated in the hands of outstanding people. Do you understand what I mean? Xiaopinggan licked his lips. Thank you, instructor, I know what to do. The two words Jizu stimulated Xiaopinggan again. Fang Ping nodded. I have informed the shooting range that you can go to the shooting range for firearms training in the afternoon. I hope you will perform better. Yes. Xiaopinggan left Fang Ping's office. In the afternoon, he went to the shooting range and used a rifle to practice shooting at a moving target 300 meters away. As a result, an hour later, Xiaopinggan set a new record with a score of 996 points for 100 shots. The record for shooting a moving rifle target ever recorded by trainees in Andesburg. After setting a record and leaving the shooting range, Xiaopinggan went to the fighting training ground, put on protective clothing, and competed with Darlene, a beautiful student with the strongest swordsmanship and the most attention among the new students, to test their swordsmanship. The two sides ended up tied. Xiaopinggan, who was not well known after staying in Andesburg for a month, made everyone in Andesburg remember his name in just one day. At dinner time, Fang Ping was in his office, holding a transfer order about Xiaopinggan, with a slightly shocked expression on his face. The person who sent the transfer order was actually the Night Watch headquarters of the Investigation Bureau in Brandy Province. An update today. Happy May Day to everyone. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 865. Is that the prison for serious criminals in Brandy Province? I heard that the people incarcerated there are all heinous villains. It looks so depressing. Huang Dejao tilted his head and opened the curtain on one side of the carriage window. He whispered in a slightly nervous voice. The four-wheeled carriage was running on the road leading to the prison for serious criminals in Brandy Province. It was still 2 or 3 miles away from the prison, but at this moment, in the carriage, through the carriage window, one could see the distance in the distance. The gray building in the valley. Maybe there are some psychological factors, or maybe the aura of the prison for serious criminals is gloomy, dark, and full of oppression. Even if the sun is shining high at the moment, looking from a distance, the heavy prison in the middle of the valley can be seen. The convict prison squats there like a vulture eating carrion. It is not pleasant at all. From a distance, one can even feel the smell of decay and corpses there. A few years ago, there was a notorious riot in the Brandy Provincial Prison for serious convicts. Although the riot failed in the end, during the 7 days that the prison was in the hands of those serious criminals, the prison's 60% of the prisoners died. Do you know how those prisoners died? Zhou Dingan said with squinted eyes, and suddenly asked Huang Dejao quietly. Huang Dejao asked stupidly, how did you die? The food in that prison is brought in from outside every day. Because of the riots, the food in the prison cannot be delivered. The prisoners eat people inside because they are hungry. There are also prisoners who use dead bodies to sacrifice to evil gods in the prison, causing the prison to many prisoners in the prison were contaminated by evil and eventually devoured each other. You ate me and I ate you. I heard that the senior secret police who later entered the prison's investigation bureau vomited. I heard that it is still possible to enter the prison now. I smell blood. Zhou Dingan said vividly, causing Yan Qinqian's face in the carriage to turn pale, with a disgusted expression on his face. In addition to Xia Pinggan, there were 6 people sitting in the extended carriage. Lin Luyu seemed to have lost her usual interest in sex today. She was sitting opposite Xia Pinggan, her eyes kept darting on Xia Pinggan's face and body. His eyes were full of inquiry, as if he wanted to discover some secret from Xia Pinggan. From the moment he got on the carriage this morning, Lin Luyu had the same expression. Just make everyone in Andesburg look at you. The other 2 people are also new students in Andesburg. The red-haired woman is called Delise, and there is a man with short light brown hair and grey eyes named Bonig. These 2 people are also with Xia Pinggan and the others today. New trainees who went to the prison for serious offenders in Brandy province to complete their executioner duties. Although Xia Pinggan looked at the prison in the distance through the carriage window, the focus of his eyes was not on that prison. He did not pay attention to the upcoming so-called executioner test at all. Xia Pinggan's left hand in the palm of his hand, he was still rubbing a mutilated 5-penny copper coin. The copper coin was only half of it. The words Fang Ping said to him this morning were still echoing in Xia Pinggan's head. From the moment you leave Andesburg in a carriage, you will have officially graduated in Andesburg. Soon, someone will contact you and tell you your new mission. As a token, the person who contacted you will have it in his hand. The other half of the 5-penny coin, he will be your future contact person, codenamed Coin. Coin? Instructor, don't you know who that person is? Yes, I don't know, because you have been spotted by the Night Watch. The Night Watch is the most special existence within the Bureau. They only have code names to the outside world. They usually have one-way contact, and their identities are strictly confidential. When talking to you after explaining this, according to the confidentiality rules of the Investigation Bureau, I will not mention this information to anyone in the future, and you cannot mention this matter to anyone. I just left Andesburg. Don't others know that I joined the Night's Watch? Your file in Andesburg will record that you successfully completed the training in Andesburg within 1 month, became a second-level police officer of the Bureau of Investigation, and was appointed by the Bureau of Investigation as an inspector stationed in Courland. Officer is your official status. Many new students who graduate from Andesburg will be appointed as inspectors in various places. This status will not be doubted. So, I now have a dual identity. Yes, after completing the executioner's task today, you can officially report to Kalanda's Investigation Bureau. Are there 2 salaries too? Cough, cough, ask him about this when you contact Coin. I don't know the specific salary of the night watchman, but within the Investigation Bureau, everyone knows that the night watchman has the most resources. The treatment should not be bad. The inspectors of the Bureau of Investigation have a similar role to the plainclothes police and patrol officers of the police station, but they have greater freedom of movement. They are equivalent to the eyes and ears of the Bureau of Investigation in various places and the flexible staff that can be mobilized. The inspectors are within the Bureau of Investigation. There are a large number of people and the establishment is not small, so there is no flaw in this official identity, and it can be semi-public within the Investigation Bureau. The role of the night watchman is highly confidential within the Bureau, and the actions are also confidential. Even the personnel within the Bureau only know the code name of the night watchman, such as coins. Soon, the carriage arrived at the entrance of the prison for serious criminals. The guards of the 2 prisons opened the large black iron doors and let the carriage into the prison. The prison was full of high walls and barbed wire, from the inside of the carriage to the outside. It looked like there were forts and checkpoints everywhere. Prison guards with guns were patrolling back and forth on the forts. The carriage was walking in the narrow passage, and there was a feeling of being invisible. By the time the carriage stopped, it had already arrived at the prison. An execution ground in the back. Instructor August, who was driving the carriage, got off the carriage and knocked on the carriage door. "You can get off now." After getting out of the car, Xiaopinggan looked at the place. The area of the execution ground was almost half the size of a football field. It was surrounded by a high wall of more than 20 meters. The land of the execution ground was covered with grass. Several execution guillotines were placed beside them. Next to the guillotine is a set of tools for fixing the condemned prisoner. The condemned prisoner is allowed to kneel on the ground without moving his hands and feet, and then stretches his neck out of a hole, waiting to be beheaded. The prison was ready, and several men wearing executioners' red hoods were standing beside the guillotine with large knives. Instructor Auguste with a big beard was communicating with several prison officials nearby. The atmosphere in this execution ground was inexplicably cold, but in this cold atmosphere, there were many flies constantly circling around the guillotines, which were attracted by the bloody smell around the guillotines. "No. It's not execution by shooting, how it's beheading." Yan Qian looked at the posture on the guillotine. His face was pale, his eyes were panicked, and he was trembling as he spoke. For the executioner, shooting is less stressful and less bloody. All he has to do is pull the trigger at close range. In contrast to the scene of slashing someone's head with a knife, you can watch the person's neck break and bleed from close range. Not everyone has the mental capacity to bear the spray head rolling to the ground. Not only Yan Qian, but also the female student named Delise was obviously very nervous. She clenched her fists and looked around in panic like a deer. "Just treat those bad guys as livestock and kill them like pigs." Huang Dejao encouraged himself, and then he saw Xiaopinggan with a calm face. "Pinggan, aren't you nervous? The most effective way to protect good people is to let evil people die. To eliminate evil is to maintain kindness, so there is nothing to be nervous about," Xiaopinggan said calmly. "Yes, it's well said. The most effective way to protect good people is to let evil people die. This is the most important responsibility of our investigation bureau. The prisoners executed today are scum and deserve death. Let them go to hell and justice will be done." Instructor Auguste had already strode over, holding in his hand the red hoods worn by several executioners. "The prison will soon bring the death row prisoners who will be executed today. The method of execution is beheading. You take turns to be the executioner, and others are watching. Each of you has to execute at least one person. This executioner's hood can relieve your pressure and allow you to enter your role faster." Instructor Auguste handed out the red hood on his hand to everyone. Huang Dejao received one, Zhou Dingan also received one, Bonag also received one, Lin Luyu received one. Yan Qian and Dai Lizi hesitated for a moment, then gritted their teeth and received one. Those who received the hoods each put on the blood-red hoods, covering their heads and faces. Only a pair of eyes were exposed from the gaps in the hoods, which looked a bit weird. When it was Xiaopinggan's turn, Xiaopinggan shook his head. "I don't have to." Instructor Auguste took a deep look at Xiaopinggan and nodded. Soon, 9 prisoners wearing prison uniforms were escorted out by the prison guards. A prison officer supervising the execution site loudly read out the order to execute the beheadings. Alfred, male, 46 years old, was sentenced to death and beheaded by the High Circuit Court of the Brandy Province in June 1573 of the 7th era of the Divine Calendar for abducting, selling, and mutilating children. He was found guilty today and was found guilty in Bo. The prison for serious offenders in Landy Province carries out executions. As soon as the prison officer finished reading, a weak man with dark face and messy hair was put on the guillotine by the prison guards, and was quickly fixed on the guillotine. The whole person was kneeling, with his head sticking out from the iron shackles, like a mangy dog with only one vertebrae broken. "Which one of you will go first?" Instructor Auguste looked at Xiaopinggan and the others and asked. Seeing that everyone was silent, Xiaopinggan took a step forward and said, "I'll be the first one." "Okay," Instructor Auguste nodded and said to the others, "You guys watch with your eyes wide open. Don't close your eyes. Whoever closes his eyes, I will let him pick up the body alone later so that he can see enough. Everyone was standing next to the guillotine, only a few meters away. From this distance, they could watch the execution at close range. Xiaopinggan walked to the guillotine, took the sharp machete handed over by the executioner next to him, and without even looking at the bastard kneeling on the ground, he chopped it off with one blow. A stream of dirty blood spurted out from the man's neck. The man's head rolled to the ground, neatly. A large circle of flies flew over all around. However, when the man's head rolled down, Yan Qian, who was standing below, softened and fell to the ground. Delise turned around, lifted the executioner's hood and retched. The stimulation of death is difficult for many people who experience it for the first time. Xiaopinggan handed the knife to the executioner next to him, and walked down from the guillotine calmly. Before he stepped off the guillotine, Xiaopinggan felt 5 points of divine power pouring out from the top of the giant tower in his secret mandala. Xiaopinggan's face was calm, but his whole heart was excited, because he finally confirmed one thing. It seemed that as long as he killed the evildoer, the giant tower would have divine power flowing out of it, just like a reward for himself. In addition to divine power, there should also be a sinful soul wailing in the flames at this moment in the cell under the giant tower. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 866. Instructor August seemed to be very experienced. He just took out a small white medicine from his body and shook it in front of the fainted Yan Qian's nose, and Yan Qian woke up leisurely. The headless corpse on the guillotine was quickly dragged aside by the people at the execution ground. The blood on the ground had not been wiped off. Soon, the second death row prisoner was dragged out. The execution procedure here was like gears on a machine. It keeps turning and never stops. Compared with the first one, this second death row prisoner collapsed before he was dragged to the guillotine. The second death row inmate looked like a young man under 20 years old, with a pale face and dark circles under his eyes. Before he was dragged to the guillotine, his whole body was already limp, trembling, and a stream of yellow liquid. There was a foul-smelling breath flowing out of his pants, and he was so frightened that he became incontinent. The few men who saw the scene were fine, but Yan Qian, Dai Lizi, and Lin Luyu, who had just woken up, didn't look good. They probably had never seen a grown man shit and piss in front of them. How ugly it would look. This is not only a visual stimulus, but also a olfactory stimulus. The smell, to be honest, is disgusting. No. No. I don't want to die, I don't want to die. The young man screamed hysterically. Pianu, male, 20 years old, was arrested for raping and murdering a girl from the same school. He was sentenced to death and beheaded by the Courland Trial Court in April 1573 of the 7th era of the Divine Calendar. Today he was identified and found guilty in Brandy. The provincial prison for serious criminals carries out the death penalty. The supervising official next to the guillotine frowned, but still read the execution order in a cold and ruthless tone. Death is never a beautiful thing. What you see today are relatively normal death scenes: blood, incontinence, and head loss. This is a just procedure, not ugly. Believe me, if you really join the Bureau of Investigation in the future, the death scenes can be described as clean and beautiful. Instructor August said quietly to everyone, if you are in the Investigation Bureau, the death scenes you can see are not just the ones in front of you. It's not even an appetizer, it's like a kindergarten child's painting, it's too pure. Once death is connected with something evil, that kind of death is the real terror. Who will be the second death row prisoner? Instructor, let me come. Zhou Ding'an mustered up the courage to step forward. Okay, I'll leave it to you, Instructor August nodded. Zhou Ding'an walked up to the guillotine, picked up the machete, roared, and chopped off the head of the condemned man who was still wailing. Then, Zhou Ding'an gasped and walked off the stage as if he was exhausted. As expected, Yan Qianqian fainted again after seeing the second person being beheaded. Only this time, Instructor August didn't use medicine to wake up Yan Qianqian. He just shook his head and said to Delise and Lin Luyu, "You two, send her to the carriage." "Instructor, doesn't Yan Qianqian need to complete today's task?" Lin Luyu asked. Instructor August shook his head. In this kind of situation, a person who fainted twice in a short period of time cannot accept the third stimulation, otherwise her spirit will be left with permanent trauma and it will be difficult to recover. Yan Qian, as a divine scroller, Qian has an inherent resistance to death and blood, which makes it difficult for her to carry out arduous and dangerous tasks in the future. After returning to Andesburg, she needs to find Ms. Millie to receive psychological and spiritual comfort treatment, and then her training in Andesburg is almost over, and the Bureau of Investigation will arrange a suitable civilian job for her. Instructor August's words seemed to announce what Yan Qinqian's future would be like, and that might be it. In this case, Xiaoping'an and others secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Yan Qinqian's character is indeed not suitable for the more dangerous and intense tasks in the investigation bureau. From now on, she will have a stable job and be as happy as an ordinary woman. Living a happy life may be more suitable for her. Yan Qianqian was quickly sent to the carriage next to her, allowing her to rest on the carriage. The third death row inmate was then brought up. Unexpectedly, this time it was Lin Luyu who took the initiative to request execution. This was definitely the first time for Lin Luyu to experience such a scene. Standing on Taishan, she pretended to be calm, but when she swung the knife, she couldn't help but close her eyes and her hand trembled. As a result, the knife was swung down. At that time, it was slightly off the mark and did not hit the death row prisoner on the neck, but on the back of the death row prisoner's head. The human skull is relatively hard. As a result, only half of Lin Luyu's knife penetrated into the death row prisoner's head and got stuck. The death penalty prisoner was so painful that he vomited blood and screamed on the guillotine. The knife was still attached to his head. It was shaking and extremely scary. Lin Luyu was stunned for a moment. Although she was wearing an executioner's mask, at this moment, facing a man who was screaming with a knife stuck to his head, she was still a little helpless. She was overwhelmed by this sudden situation. He was so frightened that he took 2 steps back. At this moment, Xiaoping'an rushed to the guillotine. He quickly pulled out the knife stuck on the death row prisoner's head. He raised the knife again and cut off the death penalty prisoner's head with one stroke. The execution was completed. Instructor August glanced at Xiaoping'an and nodded slightly. Xiaoping'an and Lin Luyu stepped off the guillotine together and returned to the team. "Are you okay?" Xiaoping'an asked Lin Luyu. "Thank you." Lin Luyu rarely tried to argue again, but whispered to Xiaoping'an. The condemned prisoners were being escorted up one after another. Bonag was the fourth to take the stage, and something unexpected happened. Because he was too nervous, he didn't cut off the condemned prisoner's head with his first blow. He had to cut it off with 2 more blows later. "Take the death row prisoner's head off." When he stepped off the guillotine, Bonag seemed to be exhausted and was covered in sweat. The 5th person to take the stage was Huang Dejao. This guy was a little hesitant when he went up, but when he took the knife, he was no longer nervous. This guy held a knife. Before cutting it off, he directly used the knife with both hands to wipe the aorta and trachea of the death row prisoner's neck, and directly bled the death penalty prisoner. The blood on the death penalty prisoner's neck suddenly spurted out for more than a meter. It was spraying like a fountain in the distance. After the death row prisoner screamed and lost all strength, Huang Dejao picked up the big knife, gritted his teeth, and chopped off the death row prisoner's head with one blow. "What were you doing in Taishan just now? Why did you cut off the blood vessels in the neck of the condemned prisoner to bleed him first?" Instructor August asked Huang Dejao, who came down. I just kept thinking silently in my heart, the scumbag who killed his parents is worse than a beast, he can be slaughtered like a pig. I followed my father to learn how to kill pigs. Huang Dejao timidly replied, very unconfident. Instructor August nodded and said nothing. Delise was the last one to go up. When she raised the knife for the first time, she failed to hold the knife and fell from her hand. Then she slashed with her eyes closed. Although the knife hit the condemned prisoner, neck, but did not chop the death row prisoner to death. The death row prisoner became incontinent directly on the guillotine this time. On the guillotine, all kinds of smells were mixed together at once. Delise screamed and chopped the condemned prisoner 3 or 4 times before killing him, but the prisoner's head was still hanging around his neck. Before Delise stepped off the guillotine, she had already begun to vomit again. There are 9 people on death row today. In addition to the 6 people who have been executed, there are still 3 death row inmates waiting to be executed. When the 7th death row prisoner was led to the guillotine, Instructor August glanced at several people and asked, "Who wants to come again?" "Instructor, I want to try again." Xiaopingan said. "Okay, come on." Xiaopingan came to power and chopped off the head of another death row prisoner neatly. There are 2 other death row inmates, and the 8th death row inmate is a rapist who has committed dozens of crimes in a row. He is a habitual criminal and has killed others in the process. When Instructor August asked, Lin Luyu came on stage again. This time, Lin Luyu's hand no longer shook. She held the knife steadily and chopped off the garbage's head with one blow. The last condemned prisoner was a cultist who also committed murder and cannibalism, which was a heinous crime. The condemned prisoner was 2 meters tall, with blood-red eyes and a very strong build. His whole body was covered with bulging muscles and weird tattoos. When he was brought in, the condemned prisoner not only showed no fear at all, but was still laughing wildly and pulling him hard. His chains rattled, and the 4 prison guards couldn't hold him back. "Ha ha ha, you cowards, if you let me go, I can eat you all, and your souls and bodies will merge with mine. You can't kill me. God has given me eternal life, I will always exist." The condemned prisoner yelled, showing no fear at all. When the condemned prisoner was brought to the guillotine, something unexpected happened. The condemned prisoner roared angrily, and the skin all over his body turned red. The chains on the 2 warning hands were instantly broken free by the condemned prisoner. Grasping the iron chain, he swung the iron chain around the neck of a prison guard, pulling the prison guard in front of him and falling to the ground. At the same time, 2 sharp fangs suddenly appeared from the corners of the condemned prisoner's mouth. "Bite the prison guard's neck." All this happened so fast that it caused a bit of chaos. Many prison guards nearby had already started to draw their guns. At that chaotic moment, a sharp ice pick flew out like lightning with Zio's sound breaking through the air, and hit the death row prisoner's head accurately. Boom! The death row prisoner's roar suddenly stopped, and the head on his neck was shattered. Blood and brain matter were scattered everywhere. The tall headless body had been frozen as stiff as an ice cube. On the guillotine, he staggered twice and then fell to the ground. The prison guard who was pulled in front of him was so frightened that his face turned pale and his whole body was shaking. Xiaopingan coldly took back his outstretched hand. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 867. An hour later, the carriage drove out of the prison for serious offenders in Brandy Province. Yan Qian also woke up again, but her eyes were still a little dazed and her face was slightly pale. The faces of the others were not very good, and they looked a little sick, because after all the death row prisoners were executed, the task assigned to everyone by Instructor August was to clean up the headless corpses of the death row prisoners. It was an intimate contact with those corpses. Instructor August said this helped everyone overcome their fear of death and corpses. After everything was completed, everyone left the prison in the carriage again, except Xiaopingan's face remained as usual. "Instructor, Why did the last death row prisoner change like that? Lin Luyu didn't ask the question that everyone was concerned about until this moment. The death row prisoner joined a cult before and participated in some cult rituals. He was contaminated by the evil spirit, so he would explode with great power before dying. Instructor August explained, such a situation is actually the same. He told us that during the mission, accidents may occur at any time, and we have to adapt accordingly. Xiaoping's performance today was very good, his judgment was accurate, and his 2 shots were very crisp, exceeding my expectations. Not bad. At this point, Instructor August turned his attention to Xiaoping. By the way, are you going to report to the Investigation Bureau of Kellen today? Xiaoping nodded, yes. The job of an inspector can be very leisurely, but it can also be very dangerous. Let me give you a piece of advice. Don't rush to perform as a new inspector. It's best to get familiar with all aspects of Calandar's situation first. Calandar is brandy. The situation in the most important city in the province is complicated and not as peaceful as it seems. Okay, thanks for reminding me. Ah, instructor, what are you talking about? Xiaoping is going to report to Klan's Investigation Bureau today. Does Xiaoping already have a formal job? After listening to the conversation between the two, Zhou Ding'an suddenly raised his head and asked in surprise. Everyone in the car focused their attention on Xiaoping, showing concern. Yes, after more than a month of study, Xiaoping has completed all training courses in Andesburg. The Investigation Bureau sent him to Corland as an inspector. His performance today once again proved his strength. He can qualified for this job. Looking at those eyes, Xiaoping smiled slightly and rubbed his face. Don't look at me like that. I only learned the news from Instructor Fang Ping before getting on the bus this morning. Hearing what Xiaoping said, Lin Luyu, Yan Qianqian and the others were relieved. It was not that Xiaoping wanted to hide something from them, but that Xiaoping had just found out. Yan Qianqian, your performance today proves that you are not suitable for the dangerous work of the Investigation Bureau. I will respond truthfully. Everyone else's performance is considered qualified. In the next more than a month, as long as you complete 2 more executioner tasks, you can overcome your own psychological barriers. When Yan Qianqian heard this, there was no disappointed expression on her face. Instead, she seemed to be relieved and relieved. After the carriage traveled 5 or 6 kilometers. Arriving at a bus stop, Xiaoping got out of the carriage and said goodbye to everyone. After a while, a black carriage came from a distance. The carriage was a private carriage. Xiaoping didn't pay attention at first. The carriage stopped at the bus stop, and Xiaoping's attention shifted to the carriage. The door of the carriage opened, and a gentleman with gray hair, a beautiful mustache and a velvet hat sat in the carriage. He looked at Xiaoping with a smile on his face. In the gentleman's hand, he was playing with half a fen. Nigerian coins. Young man, are you going to the city? I'm just on your way, the gentleman in the car said. Xiaoping understood it at a glance, and without hesitation, he got on the carriage directly and sat opposite the gentleman. Xiaoping also took out the half coin in his hand and compared it with the coin in the gentleman's hand. The cut patterns and wear marks on the 2 half coins matched perfectly, so the identity of the other party was confirmed. Hello, Mr. Coin, I didn't expect to see you so soon, Xiaoping said. As a newcomer, you performed well in prison today, Mr. Coin smiled, and then handed Xiaoping a small book with an earthy yellow cover. This is the code book I will use to contact you in the future. You'd better memorize the contents of this small book firmly within half an hour. In half of the cases, you and I will have a single line of contact. In the future, the Night Watchman's mission will be posted on the news section of the second page of Brandy Daily and in the newspaper. On the advertising page, if there is an emergency, my summons, and I will come to you personally and convey the message to you. This is my summons, Miss Heidi. Mr. Coin was talking, and then, an orange tabby cat suddenly emerged from under the seat, nimbly jumped onto Mr. Coin's palm, and raised its nose to sniff the scent of Xiaoping'an, and looked at it carefully. He glanced at Xiaoping'an, as if he was getting to know Xiaoping'an. Xiaoping'an nodded and didn't say much. He just opened the small book with an earthy yellow cover and quickly memorized the contents of the small book. The handwriting in the small book was all handwritten, and it was a code that stipulated various codes. And a code book in translation mode. If you master the things in this book, you can receive the corresponding information from the newspaper. It took Xiaoping'an more than 10 minutes to memorize the contents of the code book. I want to know how many people know this code book. Xiaoping'an returned the code book to Mr. Coin. This set of passwords is only used by 2 of us, and we know it, Mr. Coin explained, according to the tradition of the Night Watch, and to protect you, everyone in the Night Watch team uses code names to contact each other and cannot use their real names. After you join the team of the Night Watch, you can only use a code name or choose another name. You can now give yourself a code name and a new name. This code name must be unique in the team of the Night Watch. It is also the code name for you and me in the future. Used when contacting. Xiaoping'an blurted out without much thought, my name in the Night Watchman will be Agiluo. Agiluo, this name can be used, Mr. Coin said. With a move of his hand, a long suitcase appeared. He handed the suitcase to Xiaoping'an. The top item in this box is yours as the equipment of the Night Watchman. The Night Watchman has uniform equipment and must wear a mask when performing tasks. He cannot reveal his true colors. The storage compartment at the bottom of the box contains your certificate as an inspector of the Courland Investigation Bureau. The salary passbook and other necessary things have been taken care of for you, Mr. Coin explained in a very orderly manner. Does this mean I don't have to go to the Bureau of Investigation anymore? No need, everything has been settled. With that passbook, you can go to Redro and Bank on the 8th of every month to receive a monthly salary of 45 thalers. This monthly salary is also the salary of the second-level secret police inspector of the Courland Investigation Bureau. The Night Watchman does not have a fixed salary, and after each mission, the mission remuneration subsidy will be paid to your bank book. Let me ask, as an ostensible inspector of the Courland Investigation Bureau, is there anything I need to do? No, this position is just your superficial identity. It is very free and confidential to a certain extent. There are only 2 people in the Investigation Bureau who know your identity as an inspector. They will not give you any orders. The only ones who give orders are the Night Watchmen. I understand, that means it's okay for me to do some money-making work on my own when there are no orders. Of course, as long as it doesn't break the law, both inspectors and night watchmen will have other social identities as cover. No one will have the words inspector and night watch written on their face. As an inspector, different identities will also help you contact different people and get better information, as long as your new identity does not affect the mission. Understood? Do you have any other questions? Of course, I want to know how I can get the world beads to improve my strength. Will the Night Watch give out the world beads? This question is what Xiaoping'an is most concerned about. The Night Watchman's mission rewards include world beads. At the same time, Night Watchmen can exchange or purchase world beads in the Night Watch Club. Night Watch Club, Xiaoping'an suddenly became energetic. How do I join this club? After you have performed 3 Night Watchman missions and are recognized by other Night Watchmen, you will receive an invitation from the Night Watchman Club. You will know when the time comes. When will there be a mission? Any time starting from tomorrow, so I suggest you find a fixed foothold in Courland, and then order a copy of Brandy daily. All tasks will be issued at least 1 day in advance. For urgent tasks, I will contact you in other ways. Any questions? It's gone for now. Where are you going? I'll take you there. I'll get off at Saints Square. I heard the environment there is pretty good and there are many hotels nearby. I'll get off there. An hour later, Xiaopingan got off the carriage at Saints Square in Courland. Xiaopingan didn't know Mr. Coin's true identity until the carriage left. Saints Square is not in the city center, and the square is not very lively in broad daylight. There are pigeons in the square, people sitting on chairs chatting, and a few painters writing and drawing on the edge of the square with drawing boards. In the middle of the square is a bronze statue of Saint Lino. To the south of Saints Square is a magnificent church. Corresponding to the church is a bell tower. Xiaopingan's eyes wandered around, and then he followed the left hand of the saint's statue to the third street lamp on the edge of the square. That street lamp was behind a few sycamore trees, and the stone bricks paved under the street lamp were in the shape of petals. Spread out in a shape, one of the stone bricks just points in the direction of the clock tower of the square. Thinking of what was under the stone, Xiaopingan felt a little restless, but in broad daylight, he could only suppress it and wait until there were fewer people at night. There are hotels and commercial areas near this square. You can find a place to stay here first. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 868. Xiaopingan walked around the Saints Square, observed the surrounding environment and terrain, and then walked towards the boulevard east of the square with his old suitcase. This suitcase was originally kept by Xiaopingan in the space of his secret mandala. After receiving the suitcase from Mr. Coin. Daxia Dynasty, Guantiansi. Qin Tianguan casually recorded a sentence on the bamboo book and then went to do other things. Light it up later, and the incense can lead you into a top-secret spiritual space. The paper cat opened its mouth to inform the situation, and a sparrow-like voice came out. What's your relationship with the paper man's forces? Wang Xian asked. Those people were so cruel that they even sacrificed blood to a large cave in order to obtain the fragments of the old holy laws. At the same time, when he was in the true immortal realm, Wang Xian also had conflicts with them and killed a boatload of paper people. He had no good impression of that group of paper people. Light it up later, and the incense can lead you into a top-secret spiritual space. The paper cat opened its mouth to inform the situation, and a sparrow-like voice came out. What's your relationship with the paper man's forces? Wang Xian asked. Those people were so cruel that they even sacrificed blood to a large cave in order to obtain the fragments of the old holy laws. At the same time, when he was in the true immortal realm, Wang Xian also had conflicts with them and killed a boatload of paper people. He had no good impression of that group of paper people. Light it later, the incense can lead you into the top-secret spirit space. The paper cat opened its mouth to inform the situation, and a bird's voice came out. What's your relationship with the paper man's forces? Wang Xian asked. Those people were so cruel that they even sacrificed blood to a large cave in order to obtain the fragments of the old holy laws. At the same time, when he was in the true immortal realm, Wang Xian also had conflicts with them and killed a boatload of paper people. He had no good impression of that group of paper people. Brethren, we just met in the afternoon, and we met again at midnight. We are destined. Wang Xian greeted him quickly and finally knew who he was. Soon, a dark owl flew into the sealed space of the higher spiritual world and stared at Wang Xian again and again, knowing that he was a newcomer. Senior brother Hongtang, Wang Xian asked. Sure enough, it was him. He showed a slightly dark face and said, the prickly Qin Cheng who always likes to bully senior brother. Wang Xian was speechless. Is he now notorious? Then, a coquettish red lotus floated in. This time it was easier to identify, it should be Chi Miao, and sure enough it was her. After coming in, she thanked the mechanical pig, and Hong, thank you, Yuan Shen map, I really like it. Okay, stop irritating him, Yang said. Then, he turned to look at Wang Xian and said, although we are all our own people and have the same goals, we must be on guard against others. Next time you come in, you should also place your trust in the spiritual treasure. If something changes, you can still have enough confidence to protect yourself. Wang Xian has long seen that paper cats, mechanical pigs, red lotuses, etc. are all top treasures that can entrust the soul and explode with extremely powerful power. There are still a few people who have traveled far away or are in retreat and may not be able to participate, Yang said. Here are all the powerful figures who have broken the limit for the second time, and they also represent the top wizards in the Pink Tian Star territory. They have all become immortals and are stranded in the present world. Yang said, well, this is the newcomer Qin Cheng, the famous freshman Thorn Tou, you don't need to introduce me anymore, right? I helped some of you win scriptures, and also made some of you go bankrupt, he. The mechanical pig's eyes suddenly widened, and Anhong was very dissatisfied. However, no one doubts the origin of this ability. After all, the Peacock Demon clan's best talent is the movement of stars. Her technique is similar to that of Do's Wangxing. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 869. It was already dark, and the time on the clock tower on Saints Square in Kalan City was about to point to 11:30. At this time, there was silence around the square, even the pigeons had returned to their nests. There was no one in the square, only some buildings near the square still had a faint light. The most recent one. Daxia Dynasty, Guantiansi. Qin Tianguan casually recorded a sentence on the bamboo book and then went to do other things. Light it up later, and the incense can lead you into a top-secret spiritual space. The paper cat opened its mouth to inform the situation, and a sparrow-like voice came out. What's your relationship with the paper man's forces? Wang Xian asked. Those people were so cruel that they even sacrificed blood to a large cave in order to obtain the fragments of the old holy laws. At the same time, when he was in the true immortal realm, Wang Xian also had conflicts with them and killed a boatload of paper people. He had no good impression of that group of paper people. Light it up later, and the incense can lead you into a top-secret spiritual space. The paper cat opened its mouth to inform the situation, and a sparrow-like voice came out. What's your relationship with the paper man's forces? Wang Xian asked. Those people were so cruel that they even sacrificed blood to a large cave in order to obtain the fragments of the old holy laws. At the same time, when he was in the true immortal realm, Wang Xian also had conflicts with them and killed a boatload of paper people. He had no good impression of that group of paper people. Light it later, the incense can lead you into the top-secret spirit space. The paper cat opened its mouth to inform the situation, and a bird's voice came out. What's your relationship with the paper man's forces? Wang Xian asked. Those people were so cruel that they even sacrificed blood to a large cave in order to obtain the fragments of the old holy laws. At the same time, when he was in the true immortal realm, Wang Xian also had conflicts with them and killed a boatload of paper people. He had no good impression of that group of paper people. Brethren? We just met in the afternoon, and we met again at midnight. We are destined. Wang Xian greeted him quickly and finally knew who he was. Soon, a dark owl flew into the sealed space of the higher spiritual world and stared at Wang Xian again and again, knowing that he was a newcomer. Senior brother Hong Teng, Wang Xian asked. Sure enough, it was him. He showed a slightly dark face and said, the prickly Qin Cheng who always likes to bully senior brother. Wang Xian was speechless. Is he now notorious? Then, a coquettish red lotus floated in. This time it was easier to identify, it should be Chi Miao, and sure enough it was her. After coming in, she thanked the mechanical pig, and Hong, thank you, Yuan Shen map, I really like it. Okay, stop irritating him, Yang said. Then, he turned to look at Wang Xian and said, although we are all our own people and have the same goals, we must be on guard against others. Next time you come in, you should also place your trust in the spiritual treasure. If something changes, you can still have enough confidence to protect yourself. Wang Xian has long seen that paper cats, mechanical pigs, red lotuses, etc. are all top treasures that can entrust the soul and explode with extremely powerful power. There are still a few people who have traveled far away or are in retreat and may not be able to participate, Yang said. Here are all the powerful figures who have broken the limit for the second time, and they also represent the top wizards in the Pink Tian Star territory. They have all become immortals and are stranded in the present world. Yang said, well, this is the newcomer Qin Cheng, the famous freshman Thorn Tou, you don't need to introduce me anymore, right? I helped some of you win scriptures, and also made some of you go bankrupt, he. The mechanical pig's eyes suddenly widened, and Anhong was very dissatisfied. However, no one doubts the origin of this ability. After all, the Peacock Demon clan's best talent is the movement of stars. Her technique is similar to that of Do Zhuangxing. Golden Summoner. Author, Zhihu. Chapter 870. It has been a long time since the document experienced the feeling of divine power empowering the body. After the feeling of divine power empowering the body passed, Xiaopinggan, who was sitting on the toilet in the bathroom, opened his eyes. He looked at the time on his watch and found that the time had just passed. Less than 8 minutes passed, and in the sky caisson of his secret mandala temple, a full 36 points of new divine power and upper limit of divine power were added. The original upper limit of Xiaopinggan's divine power in the demigod realm was 16,318 points. Once the Green Messenger's world bead was fused, the upper limit of divine power became 16,354 points, and the bottleneck of the demigod's cultivation was suddenly reduced by this world bead. A complete break is of great significance. There were originally 55 points of divine power on the giant tower, and 7 points of divine power in the caisson of the temple. With the 36 points added at this moment, Xiaopinggan could use 98 points of divine power at this moment. I never thought that one day I would be happy to be able to use less than 100 points of divine power. I have been thinking about using 1 point of divine power for a long time. Xiaopinggan shook his head and smiled bitterly. This is really happening now and then, there is no way, the divine power in this world is too precious, all the summoners can only calculate the value of the divine power they can use, and they cannot waste any of it. Xiaopinggan had previously wanted to spend another point of divine power to expand the space warehouse of his secret mandala, so that the storage space he could use would be expanded by 1 cup, but after thinking about it, he decided to use it sparingly and not to spend too much. It only cost him 2 points of divine power every month, but these 2 points of divine power were also 1/5 of what he could naturally recover every month. Xiaopinggan took out the Tao Hongjing's Tao world bead and looked at it. He took a deep breath and slowly calmed down his burning mind. He really didn't know how long it would take to fuse this world bead. At this moment, there are not even half a guard around him, and there is no formation disk protection. If the fusion of this world bead takes 4 or 5 hours, and someone in the middle wants to harm himself when he fuses this world bead, it will be too dangerous. Although the possibility was very low, but Xiaopinggan didn't want to leave his mission and destiny to the so-called possibility, so he temporarily suppressed the urge to fuse the world pearl again. Don't forget, there is a killer on the train who wants to assassinate you. The enemy hiding in the dark is still there at this moment. Thinking that there was someone hiding in the city who wanted to kill him, Xiaopinggan calmed down completely. He took off his clothes and took a shower, and then went back to bed to sleep to restore his energy and strength. For a summoner, sleep is one of the best ways to restore energy at any time. A speechless night. At a little after 5 o'clock the next morning, as it was just dawning outside, Xiaopinggan, who was full of energy, opened his eyes and woke up. When Xiaopinggan woke up, he could already hear the sound of the landlord and his wife working in the kitchen and garden downstairs. This host couple is a model for going to bed early and getting up early. At dawn, it is also the time when many people want to get up. This is not a good time for killers to act, as it will disturb many people, so Xiaopinggan lay on the bed with peace of mind, closed his eyes again, and let his mind enter the giant tower again. When entering the giant tower, his perception of the outside world is still there. If there is any movement in the room, he can wake up immediately, so he does not have to worry about being taken advantage of. In the prison under the giant tower, there are currently 5 souls locked inside, enjoying the taste of the flames. Coming to this giant tower again, Xiaopinggan was already very familiar with the use of this giant tower. If he wanted to interrogate the souls imprisoned here, he no longer needed to go down to the prison below. He stood in the majestic hall of the giant tower, just thinking. The floor of the hall suddenly seemed to become transparent. The soul of the killer named Sajiskanal, with iron chains on his body, had appeared in the cell under the floor of the hall. Kneeling the ground was wailing, and the flames burning him had faded a lot, but it still caused great pain to his soul. Sajiskanal. As soon as Xiaopinggan spoke, the killer in the underground cell raised his head and looked at Xiaopinggan. God above, I am willing to repent of all my past sins, please redeem me. We are slowly talking about redemption. Xiaopinggan curled his lips. Last time you said that there was an iron box hidden in Saints Square. In addition to the world beads and money, there was a bunch of keys in the iron box. The key was what's it for? Ah, that key is the key to one of my backup hideouts in Coreland. Oh, won't your hiding place be discovered? That's a place I rented under an alias and wearing a magic mask from a wealthy gentleman who likes to travel around. I only went there once a few months ago after putting on makeup at night. No one knows about it except me. I have another incarnation and a backup hiding place in Coreland. Xiaopinggan's heart moved. He was still trying to find a place to stay in Coreland. He didn't expect that this guy actually had a backup hiding place in Coreland. This killer was quite cunning and could be used as a hideout by him. It's a safe place and there shouldn't be any problems. Where is the place you are looking for? It's at number 169 Lakeside Street on the Upper East Side of Kelland. Oh, how long has the house been rented? I paid the landlord 3 years' rent at once. It's only been less than half a year now. The next rent payment won't be until 2 years later. The landlord has no fixed address and travels around the world every year. He sometimes sends his personal man. The servant comes to collect the rent, and sometimes writes letters asking me to deposit the money into his designated travel account. What's the landlord's name? Justin, Sir Justin. The pseudonym I used when renting a house was Gervin, and my identity is a high-end jewelry craftsman who wants to settle in Coreland. Xiaopinggan touched his face. Besides these, is there anything else you want to tell me? Behind a row of bookcases against the wall in the study room of that house, there is a passage leading to the underground secret room. I also hid some weapons in the underground secret room there. Open the bookcase mechanism and there is a copper lamp next to the deer head specimen in the study room. On the seat, just push the lamp holder downwards, and the bookcase will open. The secret room is very safe. When Sir Justin built the secret room, it was intended to resist the invasion of the Dark Alliance, so the stone sandwich of the secret room among them, lead iron and black dog blood are also used to isolate the magic detection of the gods' favored ones. Hearing this, Xiaopinggan smiled. Number 169 Binhu Street seems to be suitable for him. I just happened to go and check it out today. Xiaopinggan waved his hand, and the poor killer's soul disappeared. With another wave of his hand, one of the 4 death row inmates he executed in the prison yesterday appeared in the cell at his feet. For these souls in purgatory, there is no such thing as lies. They are the gods here. Whatever they want to know, they will honestly explain it clearly.